Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to Cilinix Crypto, and welcome to this middle of the day market update. This time around, the video is a little bit earlier. Normal uploads and updates, by the way, will resume on Saturday, right? So it's just 2 more days of these irregular middle of the day market updates, and then we're fully back. And there's a lot of great things coming, at least from the channel. I mean, regarding the markets, we'll have to see. There's some positive news in this video. We will also talk about, the possibility of getting some sort of bullish momentum soon. The title or the thumbnail of the video is something like bull runs coming or something or bull run soon. I think it's a little bit too early to talk about that, but honestly, I think we are relatively close to at least a local bottom. And then ultimately, if that local bottom is going to turn into a bull run or not, most likely there's going to be some altcoins that actually will have a bull run. That always happens when Bitcoin finds a local bottom. There's always 1, 2, 3 altcoins that rally a lot, so that will definitely happen, but it's quite hard to identify those, and ultimately it depends very much on the fundamentals and the power of that local bottom, whether we can turn that into a real bull run for Bitcoin. I at least don't think that the bull market is fully over. I think it's too early to say that, and I think the fundamentals for crypto, but also for the general financial markets, are too good to call this a bear market. It can turn into a bear market, right? I mean, I think it would be stupid to not calculate that possibility. But a lot of the reasons why we are dropping down right now, I don't think those will last for such a long time that we can expect a year-long bear market at least, right? But those are my thoughts here to start off with. In this video, we'll talk about the fundamentals first, then we'll talk about Bitcoin. We'll talk about XRP and Ethereum briefly. Ethereum is quite interesting right now in the sense that it's at a very critical level. Bitcoin as well, but Bitcoin has a little bit more wiggle room in my opinion. And XRP has been very stable, but ultimately XRP is only going to move when we actually see some sort of a bottom forming for Bitcoin. And then at the end, if the only thing you're interested in, we will also talk about some specific altcoins. So make sure to skip ahead if you're only interested in that. But for now, let's get right into it. The fundamentals, the US market has just about opened, I think, as you can see right here. When did it open? It opened like an hour ago or something. Yeah, I think so, hour ago. Since then, moved to the upside, right? So that's actually positive. And we already knew that there were no repo operations. Okay, so that's bullish. That means there's absolutely zero in terms of repo operations. So that's a good sign when it comes to liquidity. The SOFR spread is still elevated if you take the last 4-month average or something. So this is bad. It still shows signs of liquidity stress, but ultimately it's also easing a bit. So that's both. From a liquidity perspective, those are bullish developments, right? That's what you want to see. And I think that's also one of the key reasons why we have actually seen the volatility index decrease after the NYO. It has found support, but ultimately this could be the start of it decreasing further. And I've always said, regardless of me believing that a technical bottom for Bitcoin is getting closer, and therefore also for the markets, although I think most altcoins will just continue to be bearish, right? That's unfortunately the status of the market right now, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. It depends on if you're allocated, if you're exposed to those altcoins, which I would be very strict with your altcoin holdings to judge, okay, is this going to be an altcoin that turns bearish for a longer period of time? Okay, then maybe just cut the loss, right? But ultimately for Bitcoin, I expect a local bottom, but we do need the volatility index to decrease. So the lack of repo operations and the decreasing SOFR spread, without going in depth, I've yapped a lot about those in the past couple of weeks, but without going in depth about those decreasing is a good thing. Now, ultimately, the instability in the markets is still quite high. Gold is also rallying today. It's not necessarily that much of a problem, but the dollar strength index is increasing rapidly. That's not what you want to see. There's some Federal Reserve speeches causing this and some other business. But you can also see that the probability of a rate cut in December, for example, has decreased to below 50% again. Yesterday, it was hovering above 50%. So this decreasing is a bearish development. We want those rate cuts. And if we're not going to get the rate cuts, and if we get Federal Reserve speeches and board members talking about, no, we haven't seen the tariff inflation yet, then that's bearish, and the probability of a rate cut decreases significantly. So that's also what we're seeing. So that general instability is still there, regardless of some positive feedback, I guess you could say, from the liquidity issues. Like there is some easing, but then there's some other things that create some tension. Now, outside of that, last but not least, when we're talking about the fundamentals, before we talk about Bitcoin, there is also economic data coming out tomorrow, but also on Friday, I think. And we have NVIDIA earnings. And those NVIDIA earnings will matter a lot. If the NVIDIA earnings are higher than expected, maybe we could at least eliminate that AI bubble narrative that's creating fear in the markets. And that could cause the volatility index to decrease a little bit further. And if the volatility index decreases a little bit further, we have a higher probability of creating a bottom for Bitcoin. Now, are we creating a bottom for Bitcoin right here? Ultimately, I think the fundamentals are too bad to say yes. You can see that there's a bit of bearish momentum right here during the NYO, during the start of the New York session. Initially, we were forming some balance. I would say the most important level for Bitcoin is this level right here at 89,600, right? That's the value area low of yesterday. So if we drop down below that level, then I would say, okay, I think it's most likely we are going to drop down into 86,000 and the area around that, spike down into that and then bounce back up, right? Because what I've always said for Bitcoin in the last couple of days is that I think ultimately the level between 94,000 and 90,000 is going to hold up as support. But if we get some bad news fundamentally, or if the fundamentals are not good enough, which is the case at this point of time, we can still spike down lower. And that is also happening right now. I think it's best to assume we are going to spike down lower, but short term, if you're able to monitor the prices, keep your eyes at 89,600. Okay, as long as we're holding 89,600, technically, I would actually say it's more likely we're just going to bottom here and we're going to find some stability around 91,000, which is what we've done in the last in the last 1.5 days. And then if we drop down below 89,600, place a price alert there or something, which is something I've done as well, then we can still spike down into 87,000. And that is also, even though I think it's not most likely as long as we're holding 89,600, I would say that that is the thing you need to be prepared for, right? If that makes sense. Okay, so yes, I'm telling you, we can spike down, we cannot. It's ultimately in these market circumstances, it makes no sense for me to have a strict bias and say, okay, this is what I expect and only this can happen. It's just not the truth. You need to be versatile and you need to be able to move quick and you need to be able to shift bias soon, okay, and quickly. That is what matters in these markets. And that's why I'm telling you these critical levels, right? So 89,600, 86,000, 91,000, like those are all the critical levels right now. And how the price and what happens is can be derived on how the price reacts to those levels. So ultimately, to summarize that before we talk about the rest, I would say it's most likely that Bitcoin for now is still going to hold this support level. I think the fundamentals are actually good enough to support this as well. And then if we drop down below 89,600, we can spike down into 86, 87,000. But then afterwards, I would expect us to reclaim 90,000. So I do think we're forming a local bottom ultimately. When we're talking about XRP, when we're talking about Ethereum, the same level or the same is basically happening. Ethereum needs to hold this level at 2,980. I would say it's more likely that Ethereum is going to spike down into 2,900, 2,800 right now, similar to Bitcoin. So keep your eyes on that. And XRP, same thing. I think XRP is moving to that level at $2.05, $2, but I do also think we're going to hold that, as that is also a major support level, as you can see historically, especially $2. Now, when we're talking about altcoins, right? First of all, this is a bit of an overview of how altcoins in general are doing at this point of time. It's not looking the best. There's also not a lot of altcoins right now that I would spend too much time talking about or too much time looking at. You have Aster. Aster is still quite strong. Yesterday I said, if we drop down into 1.15, 1.1, get a good reaction there. That's interesting. I still do think so. There's a bit of momentum coming into liquidity, so maybe keep your eyes on that. ICP, as expected, has dropped back down. I wouldn't bother too much with that at this point of time. And Starknet is still quite strong because there's some fear around quantum computing as well. So Starknet is one to keep your eyes on as well. Tensor is also very strong, but that's too late, I think. So that's it for now. But I don't want to spend too much time talking about altcoins right now, because ultimately I think it's it's at this point of time in the markets, it's an endeavor that's too dangerous to really put yourself to, right? So yeah, hopefully that helps. We spoke about fundamentals, the news that you need to know about, the news that you need to keep an eye on. Bitcoin mostly, and that obviously matters most for altcoins as well. XRP, Ethereum, and some other altcoins. Hopefully this helps a little bit. And hopefully we'll bottom soon. But I'll keep you updated on that. For now, I think this is what you need to know. Thank you for watching. Take care and bye.